You're watching India Global. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. Let's get you the headlines this Monday evening. First up, Abu Dhabi Crown Prince Al Nahyan is on a historic India visit. Prime Minister Modi and Al Nahyan hold talks, the focus being on energy. India-UAE sign MOUs on nuclear energy, oil and LNG. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar attends the first India GCC FM meeting, Foreign Ministers meeting in Riyadh. Jaishankar holds talks with Qatar, Saudi Arabia and Bahrain. National Security Adviser Ajit Doval likely to visit Russia for the BRICS NSA meeting. Could this be a precursor to India bringing Russia and Ukraine on the negotiating table? Fresh trouble brewing in Pakistan. Thousands protest in Pakistan calling for former Prime Minister Imran Khan's release. Imran Khan faces now over 150 police cases and his supporters are on the streets seeking his release. Powerful typhoon Yahi triggers landslides in Vietnam. At least 59 people are confirmed dead, even as dozens are missing after landslides and floods. The big story that we are tracking on India Global today is the larger push of India as far as the entire Middle East is concerned. Now let's connect these dots. First, the UAE Crown Prince is on a historic visit to India. This is his first at a time when India-UAE ties have been deeply strengthened in the last couple of years. There have been at least 5 visits by the Prime Minister to UAE. There was also a very important visit by the UAE King to India, even as the comprehensive agreement has been signed between the two nations. They have upgraded and elevated their ties in the last couple of years. Prime Minister Modi held key talks with the Crown Prince and MOUs have been signed on a whole host of important issues. As I said, nuclear energy, LNG, oil, food being some of those primary areas. UAE, remember, is also India's largest trading partner in the Arab world, and the visit reinforces strong ties between the two countries. And as of now, the bilateral trade between the two sides is at about $85 billion, and there's also a very large Indian community in the UAE at about 3.5 million plus. It is one of the top 4 FDI sources in India, and which is why this meeting is very important. But there's also another side to it, and I'm going to talk about that and then get in my colleague Ghazali as well, Mohammad Ghazali, to fill us in with the details of this visit. But first up, I want to also tell you that why is this entire push to the Middle East making so much sense for India. India is the second largest importer of oil in the world. When you have such buying power, you also have leverage. And in the last 2 years, as India has increased its purchase of Russian oil, well, it has had impact on the traditional oil exporters to India, hasn't it? Whether it is the Saudis, whether it is the UAE, they've all been impacted because India has increased its share of purchase of Russian oil. It's as much as a third, and that's exactly what geopolitics is. It is the ability to create leverage by using economics as a tool, and that's exactly what India has been able to do. As per some figures, the amount of oil that India is purchasing from Saudi Arabia has actually declined significantly. UAE has also seen a dip because Russia has seen an increase, and that's why this visit makes so much sense, because of India's purchasing power, its ability to buy oil, and at the same time get some of that leverage against some of these Middle Eastern countries. And that's the backdrop of the larger story that we are talking here. Remember, S. Jaishankar, External Affairs Minister, is also in negotiation and talks with the GCC countries at the foreign ministers level. And add to this, of course, is the UAE Crown Prince meeting here. All right, before I get in my guest this evening to talk about the larger impact and the direction and trajectory of India's Middle East policy and its ties from here on. Let's get in Mohammad Ghazali to fill us in and bring us up to speed with the visit as far as the Crown Prince is concerned, what lies ahead, and in terms of his itinerary as he heads to Mumbai for the investment and the business aspect of this trip as well.
So, the Crown Prince of UAE has arrived here in India. He held the meeting with the Prime Minister, and then they had signed 4 MOUs. One was related to nuclear energy. Then we had this liquefied natural gas or LNG supply to India from Abu Dhabi, and other sectors like there has been an MOU which has been signed between Gujarat and Gujarat government and Abu Dhabi for development of food parks as well. But besides that, the itinerary includes that tomorrow Crown Prince and his own business delegation will travel to Mumbai, the financial capital of India, and there is a business summit or a conclave which he will be attending. And why this is very significant, as you rightly pointed out, besides trade ties, investment and energy needs of India, and which is complemented by UAE, this visit is very significant because by the end of this decade, UAE and India expects the trade and ties to trade investment to be around $100 billion. Now that has only swelled in the last 5 years, and perhaps this meeting will only strengthen and boost our ties, trade ties basically with the UAE, between India and UAE. And tomorrow that business summit is to be held, which he will be attending. The Crown Prince Sheikh Khalid will be attending that in Mumbai, and there perhaps we'll hear the views of what is his views on his investment in India, UAE companies' investment in India, and India's companies investing in UAE. So both aspects will be clear once in the business summit he addresses the gathering.
All right, Mohammad Ghazali, appreciate you joining us with those details. Asif Ramiz Daudi, who's joining us live from Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, and Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar, a former diplomat, with me on the broadcast. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for taking out the time. Let me start with you, Ambassador Sajanhar. You know, I was connecting the dots in terms of the larger push for India in the Middle East, and also at a time when it has economic leverage over some of these countries, as I said, because of its purchasing power, its large basket of oil that it imports from its traditional partners. How does that plan out on a larger scale? Connect the dots for us, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gaurie. Always a pleasure to be with you. Let me put it this way. You know, between UAE and India, it's a win-win partnership. And both the countries are very mindful and very respectful for each other's interests and each other's concerns. You know, I think you are very right when you say that the United Arab Emirates is a very significant exporter of oil and natural gas to India. UAE being such a large reservoir of fossil fuels, it needs assured markets. And India, as you said, is the second largest importer of oil and gas in the world. We, in fact, import about 85% of our total requirements of oil and more than 40% of our requirements of gas. So I think both are meeting each other's needs. UAE needs assured markets. We need assured sources of supply. In addition to that, you know, there is a huge element of trust and confidence between the two sides. You know, when Prime Minister Modi visited the United Arab Emirates in 2015, his first visit after coming to power, it was the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister after 34 years. And after that, you know, we have never looked back. As you said, it's the 6th or 7th time that Prime Minister Modi has traveled to the United Arab Emirates. I think second only to the United States. He's traveled, I think, more often to the United States only. There are a large number of intergovernmental bodies also that we are, multinational bodies that we are members of. It is the I2U2. India, Israel, United Arab Emirates, UAE. We signed a SEPA, the Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement with the UAE in 22, which is doing extremely well. You mentioned UAE is the third largest trading partner of India with $85 billion. Our exports to the United Arab Emirates are the second highest in the world, next only to the United States at $35 billion. There are 3.5 million Indians who are sending some of the highest remittances to India.
Okay.
We have about And the last point, let me make it the also very important point. $75 billion, that is what the United Arab Emirates has promised that they are going to invest in India. Even in India's infrastructure fund, they have $1 billion that has been invested. So
Okay.
it's a win-win relationship. And I think the first visit by the UAE Crown Prince will provide a very significant boost to our bilateral and
Right.
regional ties.
Yes, Asif
Got it.
Ramiz Daudi, come in on the fact, the significance of this visit of UAE Crown Prince in India and the potential that Ambassador Sajjanhar said about the trade potential between the two sides. $100 billion has been said. A lot has been said about the non-oil trade as well. The upside that exists for the non-oil trade, the fact that they are now looking to trade in rupee and dirham and so on and so forth. Talk to us about that potential as far as this partnership is concerned.
Well, Gaurie, very well put. I mean, that's a very good question. As far as the significance is concerned, or even the potential, I think this is highly significant visit. If we look at the past, present, and future, we had a glorious past together with all of the GCC countries, we must say, and especially when we talk about the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia. These two countries are like, they have even given the kind of the highest civilian award to our Prime Minister from the UAE and the Saudi Arabia. Now, when it comes to the past, as I said, it was a glorious past. Present is something it has elevated to the extent that we could not even imagine that this will grow in such a way on such a short period of time, especially after the visit of our Prime Minister in 2015. That was after 34 years of gap. Now, as Ambassador Sajjanhar also mentioned, that we did not look back after that. I've been here in this region for over 2 decades, more than 25 years. I have seen myself and experienced that how this relationship has scaled to greater heights. And day by day and day after day, they have some sort of vision. And the kind of vision that these two countries here have, like Saudi Arabia, Vision 2030, and UAE, they have their own vision. And India has its own vision. And that's the reason when you talk about the trade, with the entire Gulf countries, GCC, these 6 countries, let's say, we have the kind of trade volume is around 185 billion US dollars. And when you talk about the UAE in particular,
Okay.
that is around 85 billion US dollars. And when we are projecting that to be 100 billion by the end of this decade. So when you talk about the potential, the kind of projection that we have with this kind of vision and these kinds of visits, I am sure that in the times to come, within no time frame, like within a couple of years, you will see how this relationship further grows and it benefits both these 3 countries and entire GCC countries. Yeah, Gaurie.
Right. Let me just share some details. 184 billion, about 185 billion dollars is the total volume of trade between India and the GCC countries, and the upside to this could be at least 200%, if not more. If some of the large-scale strategic investments and projects that are in the pipeline could take off. Ambassador Sajjanhar, in this backdrop of the trade potential, then let me ask you about some of those projects like the I2U2 that have been talked about. How soon do you see them materializing, especially in the midst of the geopolitical tensions that the region is facing?
Yeah, so you mentioned about I2U2. Let me also mention about IMEC, that is the India
IMEC is the other one. Yes,
yeah, economic corridor, which was signed last year. But you are very right, Gaurie, when you say that there are the geopolitical tensions in that region, particularly. And we've seen since the 7th of October last year when the Israel-Hamas conflict started. But that notwithstanding, I can see that as far as economic ties between India and the UAE, they have been expanding, they have been growing. ever since CEPA was signed in 22. And, I think everyone is aware as to how quickly, within a span of about 80 plus days, that the negotiations were concluded. We know that these bilateral FTAs or this regional FTAs, they take such a long time in finalizing. But there is so much of, as I was mentioning, trust and confidence and understanding between India and the UAE that within a matter of less than 3 months, we were able to conclude that, and it has already
Okay.
started yielding results. On the IMEC also, let me say that, when the Prime Minister visited UAE in February this year,
Yes.
everyone was thinking that this is going to be pushed to the back burner because Israel is engaged in this confrontation with Hamas. Not at
Right.
all. I think there was a working group that was established. It is working on this, and it is taking this major infrastructure project forward. There
Right.
are also, India and the UAE are also members of BRICS. UAE has just become a member of BRICS with India's support. So
Absolutely,
I think there are a
absolutely.
large number of
There is a
areas
lot
where
of
we can work
potential,
together.
and in fact, those MOUs that have been signed today could just be the very beginning. I'm afraid I'm completely out of time, gentlemen. Thank you so much for speaking to me on India Global. And on that note, we slip into a very short break. We come back on the other side and talk more about, well, what's the latest as far as the Russia-Ukraine conflict and India's role with more and more countries now pitching for it, latest being Italy. More on that after this break. Welcome back. You're watching India Global. I'm Gaurie Dwivedi. Now, the second story that we are discussing today in greater detail is the role that India could play in ending the Russia-Ukraine conflict. There are now more global voices that are raising that possibly India can make a pitch to start the negotiation, possibly even resolve the conflict. Now, it's Italy, another major power in Europe, that has said that India should play a role. We're going to come to that in just a bit, but before that, let's also tell our viewers that Indian National Security Adviser Ajit Doval is also likely to visit Moscow soon, and could this be the precursor to India brokering peace? That's our big question that we are asking on India Global. Let me get in both Shashank, Ambassador Shashank, who's the former Foreign Secretary, as well as Dr. Mridula Ghosh, who's Associate Professor, National University of Kiev, joining me to discuss this. And let me just quickly play that and put that graphic on for our viewers to see, which is what exactly President Putin said and what exactly Giorgia Meloni, the Prime Minister of Italy, is saying when they are both saying that India can play a larger role in terms of mediating. That's what on your screens is what President Putin said at Vladivostok, when he said that India could be one of the partners helping resolve this conflict. And then, of course, there's another global voice coming in. That's Prime Minister of Italy, Giorgia Meloni. All right, Ambassador Shashank, let me start with you, sir. As things stand right now, this comes after Prime Minister Modi's visit to Moscow, followed by his visit to Kiev. And it seemed that there was only a little bit that India could do, probably be at best a bystander. But as things stand right now, India is far more than a bystander and could probably make those initial steps towards a possible peace proposal.
Well, India has two roles to play as seen by the global community. One is that it's a fast emerging economy which imports almost 80% of its energy requirements from abroad. So therefore, for a very large population of India, we have to ensure that their energy requirements or other food and other security requirements, they are not disturbed in any way. And therefore, India has to play that role in order to show that, yes, we are for peace, for dialogue and diplomacy. Second role that India has to play is an important member of the Global South community, where not only at G20 meeting, India was able to get the whole African Union included as a member of the G20 get-togethers, but also we are involved in several other partnerships like SCO, like BRICS and many others, whereby we have to represent the views of the Global South. And therefore, While Russia would try to see that, yes, India looks after its interests, which also match with Russian interests. But then they are saying that, well, as a representative of the global South, which they trust very much, they would be willing to see that India can, along with other countries, can play a role. Ukraine also feels the same way. But I think the point is that the Ukrainian people are suffering very much, like the Russian people are also suffering. And therefore, it is for the Ukrainian government and Russian government to decide as to when do they actually want to achieve peace.
Absolutely.
So India has to create the ground along with the global South. And then we just have to wait and see how the two main adversaries are able to reach that stage.
Right. Dr. Ghosh, comment on that is it now up to the leaders of the global South and countries like India that could actually now identify possible peace proposals?
Well, I really will welcome such an idea. And even, when our Prime Minister says this is not an era of war, and he reiterates the idea of peace. So from that standpoint, if we can really make a qualitative difference in brokering any such deal between Ukraine and Russia, that would be great. Having said that, I would, however, state that we must be equidistant and we must be very balanced and very neutral. So that should be also the popular perception. Here, the popular perception is a little bit different due to different factors. However, people really it will be a very big difference to the people's lives, because we are spending sleepless nights in Kiev. Every day there is drone attack, there is missile attack. And it's terrible, including the capital, Kiev. So I believe that nobody in this world wants peace. As Ambassador Shashank has said, the people of Ukraine and also the people of Russia, because they are suffering. I would also say there is a policy perspective. We are having very top-notch people talking to both sides.
Yes.
And I believe that the impact of our diplomacy, it's a big test for our diplomacy. We can make a sustainable peace, not just supporting only on the Russian side or totally on the Ukrainian side, but remembering that this is an unprovoked war,
Okay, let me ask this to Ambassador Shashank, that when we are talking about possible peace proposals or negotiations where India could play a role, how do you see a National Security Advisor's trip to Russia? Because it is being seen as part of a larger push towards peace where India could be a major player.
What has happened so far, that many countries like China, Brazil and others, they have given some proposals which should be acceptable more or less to one side or the other side. Now, India, our National Security Advisor has gone to Moscow for meeting with the other global South leaders. And they have to make sure that it's not a question of proving that India is in the middle, that India will not do certain things to look after its own economy, or which would be helpful to the Russian economy also. But what India will do is that we want peace. We want that end to this war. And therefore, we are quite willing to go ahead along with the other countries who are for peace. Because what happens is that if there is war in Europe, definitely European people get affected. But the global South, which gets the maximum impact, because most of them don't have 100% of their resources under their own control.
Right.
They depend on others' supplies. So therefore, it's very important that we take care of the interests of the global South also, when we are thinking of peace and dialogue and diplomacy in Europe.
I guess that is the larger role that India is playing right now, which is, as a very responsible leader of the global South, it is making efforts to at least bring Russia and Ukraine on the negotiating table. With that, it's a wrap. Thank you so much, both of you, for taking out the time and joining me on India Global. And thanks so much, viewers, for tuning in.